Welcome to Gold Trails and Ghost Towns. I'm Mike Roberts with Bill Barley, our tour guide for the Pacific Slope riches of silver, gold, copper we've been talking about over these past programs. Yep. Where are we going today?
Mike, we're going to a town that was once one of the most famous towns on the Pacific Slope in the West Kootenai country. Right in the heart of the Kootenays, it was in the Silver District, Old Kaslo. Still standing today.
Still standing, so we could go back and experience the stories we'll hear about.
Marvelous town.
Okay, going to go to Kaslo when we come back in just a moment. The riches there are silver, and there are some great stories to hear about, so don't go away. And Ghost Towns, talking about Kaslo today. What year, what era are we talking about for the start of Kaslo?
Really 1890, Mike, which is a little early because the Slocan rush didn't start till about 1891.
And how did Kaslo get its start?
Kaslo was very interesting because an entrepreneur, an adventurer called George Kane, who came out from Ontario, decided that the Kootenai mineral excitement would move north up Kootenai Lake. And he was right. So in anticipation of that, he got a bunch of land on a big flat on the northern edge of Kootenai Lake, actually on the western side, and it was known as the Kaslo Flat, and he preempted and bought what he had to there. This was in 1890. Then he waited for the rush to start.
He was a bit of a fortune teller, and how long did he have to wait till his fortune came in?
Surprisingly, only about a year.
Pretty good guesser at these kind of things.
He was a very lucky guy, and the thing that really started him on his way was a chance discovery by a guy called James Cockle, who was kind of a tramp miner and a prospector in the area, and he discovered a 120-ton boulder, which we see here. It was known as the Silver Boulder, and we must realize that this boulder was so fantastic in the mining world, it made news all over the mining world. It was electric because it was the biggest silver, lead, zinc boulder found in North America, and it produced, Mike, 18,000 ounces of silver and 72 tons of lead.
This one boulder?
The one boulder. And of course, news spread all through North America that there were silver boulders of 100 tons being found in what they now called the Silvery Slocan.
How many of these silver boulders were discovered?
Well, a number were discovered, actually. This particular one had rolled down the hill from the Slocan Star mine, and it was not a mine in itself, although at that time Cockle felt it was. He sold it for $2,000, and the purchaser, a guy named Middaugh, who was pretty fast on his feet, realized $20,000, and at that time that was a lot of money. So Middaugh turned a quick $18,000, which in today's money would be at least $250,000.
Well, why did Cockle sell it for $2,000?
He wanted to get his start, he wanted to start his mine, and he felt if there was one boulder like this, surely there were many more. The vein must be fantastic, but the vein wasn't on his ground.
Well, if you find something that's this unbelievably wealthy, you think you'd want to, I mean, it's sitting right there. All you've got to do, it's virtually pure. Well, what was the scam? I mean, this doesn't sound straight to me somehow.
Middaugh said he would exhibit this boulder in the Chicago Exposition, the World's Fair. And of course, he was just lying to Cockle, but Cockle, being a kind of a decent sort of guy, believed him, and he sold the boulder to Middaugh. Then Middaugh said he couldn't transport it and broke it down, of course, and realized a terrific profit from it. But that got Kaslo off the mark.
Well, how did Cockle feel about this? I mean, he obviously staked his claim. There was no other wealth on his property at all once the boulder was gone.
Yeah, well, Cockle had $2,000, which then was, you know, I mean, you can multiply that by 25 times now, and it was probably equivalent to about $50,000. So he got a start.
This is the stuff that we're talking about, this material right here. The boulder was 120 tons, called galena. Now, is this the same stuff?
Yeah, that's essentially the same sort of ore. It's a silver, lead, zinc mix, and sometimes it contains a high percentage of silver, and sometimes it contains a high percentage of zinc, sometimes lead. And the boulder that Cockle found was a mixture of essentially this type of ore.
Cockle was the little guy standing on the right in that.
That's right.
His name appears later, and we'll get back to that.
Yes,
and it all comes down to this material right here.
That's right, it does. Yeah.
How big a find was the silver find in Kaslo?
Well, Kaslo was really on the eastern edge of the silver find. The silver find was between an old town called Kaslo, which we're discussing today, and also New Denver, which was on Slocan Lake on the western side. And in between those two towns was the Silvery Slocan. That would be Sandon and Zinkton and Cody and Three Forks and all those fascinating towns in that area. And That's where the silver was, in that Slocan range, and there were magnificent mines. The Whitewater mine, which produced tons and tons and tons of high-grade silver, paid dividends, Mike, of $240,000 in the first couple of years, which was a lot of money then. Then the Cork mine and the Rambler Caribou and the Payne and the Slocan Star and the Yankee Boy and dozens and dozens of high-grade silver mines.
Was there the commensurate silver rush to this location? I mean, once this boulder was found, what effect did its publicity have around North America, around the world?
Well, of course, everyone began flocking into the silvery Slocan. The easiest place to go was Slocan, at least Kaslo. And of course, here they came in by sternwheeler. And this is one of the sternwheelers docking in Kaslo in the 1890s.
We've got, as a matter of fact, right here, a lamp from one of the sternwheelers. Now, this one here it's got a bracket on the back, and it opens up. And where did you get this one from?
That actually came from the West Kootenai, came off the old Minto, and it's a running light from the original Minto.
And you've got a couple of these.
Yes, I've got the pair that came off the Minto when it was wrecked many, many years ago.
What a wonderful little memorabilia of that event.
Yeah.
Kaslo got cooking after that. 1891?
1893 was really the top year. So 91 it was starting to build up, and then a few hundred people in 92. But by 93 it was booming. It was really coming into its own. Every one of these sternwheelers that was landing at the Kaslo landing was disgorging passengers.
To a population of about how big? And look at the faces in this shot. This shot must have every one of the community's pillars, pillars of the community. Ladies in their finery.
Oh, sure. And it had 3,000 people. One time the 5th largest city in British Columbia. Made all the towns around look like they didn't count, except, of course, for Rossman, which was then only in a formative stage. So it was the big town of the West Kootenays in 1893.
And rip-roaring place it was, too. Whenever there were miners, there was lots of excitement when they got a chance to
Sure.
let their hair down.
The two big holidays, of course, the 4th of July was the big holiday probably, because this was the American 4th of July, and most of the miners in the West Kootenai country at that time were American miners. So you had your horse races, and some of these horse races, they had $100 prizes, $150 prizes. A lot of money then, Mike.
Right,
a lot of people watching it, and considerable contest for the first prize.
And look at this. I mean, these look like the Grenadier Guards or something. I mean, these uniforms are impressive. The helmets are magnificent. What's this event?
Sure. This is the Calathumpian Parade, which is kind of a men's organization that was kind of a spoof on some of the men's clubs and was quite common in certain parts of the West, especially in the mining towns. And they were pretty important organization, especially in Kaslo. Yeah.
They would be like the eagles or the moose or the elks,
sure.
The Calathumpians.
Yeah, they've died out since that time.
I'd like to bring them back, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, this place was booming. There was everything there. I guess we've talked about hotels and city halls and stuff like that. Kaslo had it all.
Yeah, sure. And they were a bona fide city by 1893, and they thought the population was going to jump from 3,000 to 10,000. They made a slight error.
They made a slight error. You told me about some sort of an opera house or something that had an actual revolving stage.
Well, yes, this was in 1893, and Kaslo, you must admit, was a wild town. Only 2 constables in the town to handle 3,000 miners, and very few women around. There were some women of questionable repute, and some of them were in the Theatre Comique, which was a theater that had been imported from Spokane, and it was rather salacious. They had a revolving stage, and of course the girls were there, and it was a gambling establishment. It was pretty wild and woolly.
Well, it sounds like my kind of entertainment, you know. After a hard day chipping away at the silver boulders, you really want that kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
We've talked, too, about really the measure of a town was in its newspaper. And a man who we've talked about before had a newspaper in this camp as well.
And here he is, probably the genius of the newspaping world is certainly in the West Kootenai country, and I consider no equal to this individual, including Bob Edwards of the Calgary Eye-Open. And this is Robert Thornton Lowry, who owned about 15 newspapers throughout the Kootenai country. Kootenai boundary, actually. This was his favorite part of British Columbia.
And he published a paper called the Kaslo Claim. Now, Kaslo, as quick as it started, nearly died.
Very close to it, just on the edge. And the Kaslo Claim, of course, only lasted about 16 weeks. And when you see, in 1893, Mike, Kaslo hit its high mark, and it also hit its low mark, because the Depression started, and the Depression was was just about the end of Kaslo.
This is the front page of his newspaper, and it's dated Friday, August 25th, 1893. Kaslo claim, born on the 12th of May, died on the 25th of August, 16 weeks of unbelievable wealth, and rest in peace.
This is the famous tombstone issue, probably the most famous front page of all the newspapers in the West, including the United States. This is the tombstone issue.
So Lowry was a creative genius. I mean, it wasn't enough that he put together a newspaper, but he commemorated stuff in the most original way.
That's right. You could read a newspaper out of that West Kootenai country at this particular time, or the boundary, and you could read it and say, that newspaper was produced by Robert Thornton Lowry.
What caused the collapse of Kaslo?
Well, really two things. The major contributor, of course, was there was a panic, a bank panic, a depression in 1893, very serious depression. And accompanying that depression was a plummet in the price of silver. So silver just dropped out of sight, and the result was the major bank in Kaslo, which was Burke's Bank, owned by Colonel Burke of Spokane, closed its doors, and the depositors were left high and dry. All the depositors lost their money except one.
And who was what's the story here?
Well, one guy, his name was Joe Davis. He was an American, he was a Missourian, and he decided he had $700 in Burke's Bank, and he was going to get it back. So he scraped together enough money. He knew that Burke had headed for Spokane. So he scraped together enough money to get to Spokane, and he spent several days in Spokane, finally tracked Burke down, put a .45 Colt to his head, and said, I want to withdraw my money. Now, Burke was in a bit of a pinch because he didn't have any money, but he had a few dollars. He got at a poker game. He played for 24 hours, managed to accumulate $700. He then cashed out, and Davis is waiting for him. He took his $700, the only depositor from Burke's Bank who got his money back.
Boy, that must have been a banking scam. I mean, with all those people and all that wealth in that short a time, why did Burke's Bank fold? Was somebody just taking the money out of one teller and putting it somewhere else, or what happened? He
was speculating, Mike, and, you know, and this was common with the banks of that day. They were not protected, so that when he speculated with your money, and the result was, of course, the bank went broke.
So silver crashed, Burke's Bank went bust, the newspaper folded in 16 weeks. I mean, that's amazing. A newspaper usually hangs on to the bitter end.
Yeah.
What other kinds of events contributed to this sudden demise?
Well, the next year, 1894, two other catastrophes hit Kaslo, enough to stagger an ordinary town. In fact, put it under, but Kaslo didn't go down. One was the flood of 1894. Kootenai Lake rose by 18 feet, which is incredible. Flooded probably about 60% of the business district of Kaslo, and Kaslo, simply as we can see in this photograph here, was underwater. I mean, but it did not knuckle under.
It didn't knuckle under. It also suffered through a fire. So I mean, you've got the flood wasting it, and then a fire right on the heels.
Here's the morning after the fire, 1894 as well. So after, you know, the flood hits, and then the fire hits, and Kaslo is literally staggered. It's on its knees.
When silver's gone, the bank is gone.
The newspaper's gone.
But it doesn't die.
No, it doesn't die.
We'll take a break here. When we come back, we'll see what resurrected Kaslo. We'll do that right after these words. Towns, and we could be talking about silver trails and ghost town in the form of Kaslo that almost became a ghost town 16 weeks after it really started to hit its heyday.
Yeah, it was a very short period, Mike. The population dropped from 3,000 right down to 1,000 and threatened to go lower, but it didn't.
Now, why didn't it? I mean, if the silver market collapses, basically, if you're producing silver, you're out in the cold.
Well, some of the mines, like the Payne mine, was pictured here is one of the famous mines of the Spokane. And it was the Payne and the American Boy and the Slocan Star and the Silversmith and the Rico and all sorts of mines. There were literally 24 huge mines that were producing masses of ore, and the ore was so rich, Mike, that even if the price of silver did drop, they were getting up to 1,000 ounces of silver per ton.
So they could keep operating even though the market was so
That's right,
awful.
And not only that, they could pay dividends even though the market was low.
Okay, so that's what kept them going. Despite the sad state of the market, people could keep working.
Sure, so they kept on limping along in Kaslo, and here's one of the open stagecoaches leaving in front of Garland's store, and it's leaving for the old wagon road that leads into the heart of the silver district.
So Kaslo became a the supply center. It was sort of the hub. Sternwheelers brought the goods to Kaslo, and then they got trucked to where the real money was being made.
That's right. And here's one of the Sternwheelers stopping on its way to Kaslo, and this was typical of the times, that the Sternwheelers started to bring a few people back in, and the mines started to get hold, and but the thing that really saved Kaslo was this, the railroad.
So even though everything looked pretty gloomy, the railway had faith that this place was going to keep
That's
going.
right. The Great Northern was convinced that Kaslo and the Silvery Slocan had a future. So they began to construct a narrow-gauge railway over some of the most magnificent territory in the West. And this is the Kaslo and Slocan, and probably this shot was taken in 1897, just after it was completed. This is Payne Bluff, and you look down over 1,000 feet into the valley below, and here's the Kaslo and Slocan Railway bringing the silver ore back from the Silvery, the heart of the silver district. So this really made the difference. It started to consolidate Kaslo. Its population now began to creep upwards.
Okay. So that's what brought it back. And did it ever come back to the same size? Did it reach 3,000 people again?
Never did reach 3,000 again, but it came back and it stabilized. And remember that it was so rich that some of the people in Spokane did extremely well. Some of the money men in Spokane, you know, they were the money men of the Kootenai country, and they produced a terrific amount of wealth in Spokane. And here's some of the examples. These are silver bars out of the Kootenai country, and these ingots are huge. They come. This is pictured in the trail smelter, and there were about 8 tons of silver. Is pictured in this particular photograph.
And as you've already pointed out, most of the money went right down to the United States.
Sure, and here are some of the mansions that were built in Spokane in the 1890s from the mines in the Kootenai country, including the Silvery Slocan.
What were some of the names of some of these barons?
Well, there were a number of individuals. There was Colonel Peyton, and there was Redpath, and all the famous Spokane names.
If you go down to Spokane today and you take notes of some of the main buildings and streets, you'll probably come up with some of the people who've profited the greatest.
Sure, because definitely the wealth and the prosperity of Spokane was tied almost directly to the Kootenai country.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't flow to Victoria. It didn't flow to...
No.
Yeah. And there was always a fight going on, too, just in among... We were the suppliers of this wealth to somebody else.
Yeah, essentially. The Inland Empire kind of pulled the strings.
Sounds like a good story, though, doesn't it? I mean,
yeah.
How many millions and millions of dollars was made out of this country?
Well, you must remember that a lot of these American entrepreneurs who came into the Kootenai country were literally flat broke when they came in there, and they ended up as multimillionaires. In the 1890s, that was a lot of money, Mike.
Yeah. Well, as you said, the silver boulders that were discovered in that area were bigger than anything that was found in other silver rushes anywhere else.
Oh, sure.
Certainly got the ticket for that neck of the woods.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about, there's always, it seems to me, a story of some riches that were not actualized somewhere along the line.
Yeah, well, that's true. I mean, you take a look at Kaslo at this time, and we can see this in this particular photograph, and there are all sorts of lost mine stories and so on in this particular part of the country. Some of them are fascinating, and I find one of the most fascinating lost mine stories is the story of the old gem mine, which is between Kaslo and New Denver, up in the heart of the Slocan, right near a creek called Carpenter Creek.
Carpenter Creek,
Yep.
the gem mine.
Mm-hmm.
What's the plot here?
Well, the plot is really, again, somewhat like Cockle in that some miners were looking in that area, looking for outcrops, and they found some huge silver boulders, which were very high in silver content. And they found these boulders that had rolled or been carried downstream from somewhere. They're not sure even yet. And they mined this particular claim like a placer mine, not like a hard rock mine. So they began just recovering these boulders, and guys like Mickey Byrne and Frank Edwards worked the silver boulders in the gem mine for years and did fairly well. It's still there, and no one is convinced exactly where the silver came from.
Well, why don't people just walk up Carpenter Creek, tapping on these rocks, and find the stuff?
Well, Mike, of course, most of the rocks are under the ground, because of the variations of the creek and so on, so that they may be 10 feet under, or they may be 15 feet, they may be 20 feet. Some of them are outcropping on the surface.
So, I mean, you take along, I don't know, some sort of metal detector or stuff
well,
like that. I mean,
they work to a certain depth, but they're not. It's an imperfect science.
Is the mining history for this area now written and completed? Or with the wealth that was in there and the technology that was available way back when to take it out, with our technology, is this area still harboring some unbelievable riches?
Well, yeah, there are still mines working right in the town of Sandon itself. And so the chances of ore at depth in the Slocan cannot be dismissed. And I think that's been proven over the years that there are still some mines in the Slocan that are worthy of at least more prospecting.
There are some very interesting artifacts. I mean, these mines, I had to expect when Bill brought this in that it was from the CPR or someplace. But this is China that the mines
That's right.
would have struck for them or cast for them or whatever you do to get China. And right on it, it says the Rambler Caribou. You've mentioned that already, a milk pitcher from Rambler Caribou Mines Limited in Kaslo.
Yeah.
I mean, these people did it up right.
Oh, sure they did.
This
And
was rich.
This wasn't the richest mine. It was just one of them.
Yeah. Just excellent stuff. What's happening in Kaslo today? It's not a ghost town today, and that's one of the great joys.
I consider it one of the prettiest towns in British Columbia. I have kind of a soft spot for Kaslo. I mean, if you walk through Kaslo today, you see the old City Hall, which is still standing, 1890s, magnificent structure. You can walk down Front Street, which is still the main street, and see a number of buildings that are there. You can go down and see the old Moyer, which is one of the great sternwheelers of Kootenay Lake. You can walk up and see the Langham Hotel, and the whole area is that kind of has that mood of history. You can look across the lake to the range beyond, and the old Jumbo Pass. You look north up into the Lardo, and then you look west right up into the Slocan country and up into the Whitewater district and Nashton and all through there. Look south down into the Ainsworth country. It is really quite a fascinating town.
And Kootenay Lake, such an unbelievably beautiful location with the mountains all around. Well, you've called it moody. It's obviously struck a chord for you.
Oh, yeah.
And if you go back there today, that same sense is there.
Oh, yes, indeed. Kaslo is really quite a unique town.
Bill, thank you very much.
You're welcome, man.
The story today has been Kaslo, silver, and the story of the growth of a town around 1890, its demise in 93, its burst back to life as a result of silver. A great story. Join us next time for another story on gold trails and ghost towns.